There are two key challenges in the HSE, or Health, Safety, and Environment Department. First of all, we have to manage and we have to comply with the regulations, and we have to author safety data sheets for our customers and for our internal users. So managing compliance and manually authoring safety data sheets is an ongoing struggle for many businesses due to the complexity of regulations and the risk of human error and problems in the work organization. For example, compliance with regulations. We have to handle hazardous materials, both those that come into our plant and those that are leaving. We have to navigate regulatory challenges, including a constantly changing regulatory background. And we have to deal with the inefficiencies of, for example, manual SDS or document creation. And that's really the first challenge that we face. The second challenge is in managing our work organization. We want to focus on the critical tasks, but we also need to ensure that safety and compliance remain top priorities. And so I'll also talk a little bit about that. Now, the first challenge, let's talk about compliance with regulations. So there are different regulatory requirements depending on each region and jurisdiction. For example, in the EU, there is the REACH regulations, and in the US, we have TSCA and the OSHA regulations. And even though we talk about what's called the globally harmonized system for chemical classification, it's actually the globally not quite harmonized classification because each jurisdiction has made changes to the recommended legislation to customize it for their own country or jurisdiction. And that poses a challenge. We need to have regulatory knowledge about each of these jurisdictions that we're working in, and we also have to provide documents that are in the language of the country or regions we're talking about. And it's very difficult to have both the regulatory knowledge and the language competence for all of these different regions.
Yeah.
Not only that, the regulations are changing. So, for example, in the United States, basically in July, there was an amendment published to the US HAZCOM regulations relating to safety reporting. It's the first major change in 12 years, but this represents a change in the United States. And we have numerous, if you multiply that by hundreds of countries around the world, there are numerous and constantly changing national and international regulations. And we need to stay up to date with the most recent regulations. We need to identify those products that have been affected by those changes, and we need to apply those changes and create new safety documents and other regulatory documents. Now, let me just show you tools that can support meeting these challenges, and let me demonstrate these. So I'm going to switch to ChemDocs here. And just as an overview, this is the ChemDocs main window. You can see we've got the navigation menu here on the left, we've got the working area in the center, and we've got user settings and administrations over here. And in this case, to demonstrate this first challenge, I've created a number of mixtures, and I've created a number of substances. And I just want to show you how this tool can automate the process of keeping these up to date. So let's start with my substances. If I need to check if my substances are up to date, I can just select the substances. I can come here and do an update check of those substances. In this case, let's say I want to do the update based on the European regulations, and I can submit and do an update check for those, in this case, 17 substances. But the process is the same, whether it's 17 substances or whether it's 1,700 substances. So basically, it's going to go through and process and do the update checks for that. So we'll just take a minute while it does that. So let me go ahead and show the result of this update check. Basically then, for each of the substances, I can see at a glance where there have been changes, where the regulations have been changed. And let me filter this so that I'm focusing on only those that have changes. So for example, I can see that there have been changes to sodium nitrate in the REACH Annex 17 and the German forbidden chemicals regulation. There have been changes for benzyl alcohol as it relates to the European Union classification. And so it's very easy to identify those substances that have been changed. And not only that, I can then just select those substances and I can execute the update so that it updates the regulations and classifications there. Simply put, it's just a few clicks to update tens or hundreds or even thousands of products. Now, obviously, it's going to take longer to update thousands of products with this system, but it's very easy to do. Once I've updated the substances, I can do exactly the same thing with my mixtures. So if I come here to my mixtures, I can select the mixtures that I have. And I can do the update check mixtures in exactly the same way. And basically, in that process, I can very quickly make sure that my substances and mixtures in my database are up to date with the most recent regulations.
Yeah.
Now, once I've updated my substances and mixtures, I then can execute, let me execute the update for the mixtures. Once I've done that, I then need to create or update my documents. And it's very easy to do that as well with ChemDocs. So let me just show you how to do that as soon as the update for the mixtures is complete. So if I come to, for example, my products, and I can do a search, for example, for all of the different documents that I have. So I'll just search for the documents that are there. I can select these products, and then I can update documents based on the new classifications that I have. And you'll notice that in this case, there are documents from many different countries in Europe for this example. So I just will click the Update Documents buttons, and I'll update, in this case, the selected documents and click the button, and there we go. So basically, the process of updating and maintaining documents and making sure that they're up to date with the most recent regulations is a very easy process that requires just a few clicks. Let me switch back to my presentation now. Now, I did these through the ChemDocs software. And let me just talk a few minutes about ChemDocs. ChemDocs was founded in 2011 as an associated company of UCS, Unique Computing Solutions, in Vienna, Austria, which has been creating software for telecommunication companies, hospitals, medical establishments, even some military work since 1999. ChemDocs is a safety data sheet authoring and classification software. It provides all the necessary features for seamless hazardous material management for regulatory experts. It supports high quality classifications with strong regulatory content. We update over 200 regulations, inventories, lists in our software to make sure that the content is up to date. And as you saw, it allows people to generate and update safety documents in a way that's even more efficient than ever before. Now, ChemDocs is a one-stop shop, and I'll explain that more in a minute. It's efficient and easy to use. It is an open software, and it's easy to integrate with other systems, for example, Yavion. It is flexible, and it's easy to automate. You can see that we have the ability to automate the updating of over a dozen products and creating updating over a dozen documents. It is compliant. We update our regulations and lists, and we send out updates every 3 months to make sure that we are up to date with the most recent regulations. It's easy to audit the updates that we make and the changes that are there. It uses state-of-the-art technology, and we have support in the US through ChemDocs Incorporated, in Europe through ChemDocs GmbH, and we have a number of regional partners that support in different areas. Now, let's talk a little bit about the challenges. Oh, excuse me, just a minute. All right, let me take just a minute and show you more about how ChemDocs works. So I'm going to switch back to ChemDocs again. And I'm just going to go through the process of what it takes to put together a safety data sheet for a simple product. So let's suppose I have a new mixture, and so I'll make it a new final product. And basically, I'm going to put together a simple organic mixture, and we'll make safety data sheets for this mixture for a few different jurisdictions. So I'll give the mixture a name. I can also give the mixture names in other languages if I choose to. I can add ingredients to that mixture. So let's just add a few common organic ingredients for an organic mixture. So in this case, I'm going to choose some ethanol and ethyl acetate and toluene. And I'll just add those to my mixture. And let's say that I have 25% ethanol. I have 40% ethyl acetate, and the rest is toluene. I can classify, based on just that recipe, I can classify that mixture, and I can get a calculated classification. So here's the classification I have. Let me just change the setting for just a minute. So instead of Europe, let's make my default the United States and DOT. So basically, I have a worst case classification for Europe. And the reason I say that this is a worst case is that ChemDocs had to make some guesses about physical and toxicological properties. We did not add any physical or toxicological properties for the mixture as itself. So we really were working with just the recipe and the weight percents of the recipe, which is really a very minimal set of data. And ChemDocs came up with a classification. Now, if I add physical or toxicological properties to this, it then becomes I can get different information. So for example, for flammable liquid, if I add flashpoint information, instead of being, say, a category 2 flammable liquid with packing group 2, just by adding the flashpoint, if I have measured that flashpoint and I know that that flashpoint is, say, 58 degrees Celsius, if I then go back and reclassify with that additional information, before classification, I'm flammable liquid category 2 and packing group 2. After I reclassify, I'm flammable liquid 3 and packing group 3. So basically, ChemDocs will give you a great starting point, and you have the ability to enrich or add your own data to the system. So as you can see, then it's packing group 3, which is less hazardous. Now, once I've classified the product and made any changes and reclassified it based on my own information, I can then save the product and I can make documents. So for example, to make a standard safety data sheet, I'll just click on the Create a New Safety Data Sheet button. And in this case, I'll choose, let's say I'm making a safety data sheet for the United States. And I'll just use our standard out-of-the-box template. I can then basically just save that safety data sheet as a draft or a final version. And so let's just do that. And I'll show you what it looks like out of the box. So out of the box, we have a good, generally compliant safety data sheet. We do have the opportunity to customize it with our own customizations. We can customize any line or section or add our own things. But for this purpose, I will just Save that there. And let's take a look at this safety data sheet. As you can see, it's in English. It's using the US regulations. It has the things that you'd expect in the safety data sheet. For example, it's got the classifications that are required. It's got the label elements, the pictograms, and the hazard and precautionary statements. It's got the hazardous ingredients. It's by default, we only show ranges, but you can show exact values. You can change whether the pictogram column shows up. You can change many things about this. It automatically calculates first aid and firefighting, accidental spill and release, handling and storage, occupational exposure limits.
Wow.
In section 9, we've got the physical and toxicological properties. Section 10, we've got the stability and reactivity. Section 11, toxicological information. And section 12, ecological information, disposal and waste, transport information, and basically everything that you'd expect in a safety data sheet, including for the US, many national regulations like California Proposition 65 and other things like that. Normally I would ask for questions, but because this is a recorded session, I'm going to not do that. But once I've created the safety data sheet for the US, what I can do is I can automatically generate the safety data sheet for other jurisdictions. So let's say I need safety data sheets for Canada in English and French, and maybe I need Mexico, and maybe I also want Brazil, let's say. If I have these in my license, I can then just have ChemDocs automatically generate the safety data sheets for those other jurisdictions. And any changes that I make to customize my template show up in the safety data sheets for the other jurisdictions so that they have the same look and feel, even though they are using a different language, they are using different classifications because the GHS classifications are different for jurisdictions, and they have different national or international tables, other things like that. And you can see here, so it very quickly generated safety data sheets for those other jurisdictions. If I look at, for example, the safety data sheet for Canada in French, you can see in this case that it is in French. It's using the dangerous product regulations. But if I come down a few sections, you can see that it has the same look and feel as the safety data sheet that I did before.
Yeah, that's great.
All right. So with that, I'm going to switch back to my PowerPoint presentation, just in the nature of time. But that gives you an example about how it's efficient and easy to use, and how it's flexible and how you can make changes. Now, let's talk about the second challenge, and that's the work organization. So health, safety, and environmental work depends on other workflows in your company. For example, R&D may be working with new recipes. Purchasing may require maybe bringing in new materials that need to be evaluated, or you've got continually issues related to that, and incoming documents and safety data sheets and technical data sheets from your suppliers. And other workflows in your company depend on the health, safety, and environmental output. For example, and interact with them. For example, labeling depends on correct chemical classifications, but it also depends on information from the production workers, like batch number or expiration date. Distribution of documents is involved with, sales and marketing need to distribute documents and make sure that the updated documents are getting to the right customers, just to be compliant with the regulations. Operational safety. Workers in our plant need to understand how to handle those chemicals that we're making or the chemicals that we're bringing in. And marketability. Now, we have this little basically cartoon on the side showing that sometimes it's not always clear who's doing what thing. And in some cases, we have, HSE experts doing things that production should be doing, or vice versa. We have HSE experts doing things that sales should be doing in an ideal situation, or vice versa. And we want to avoid that kind of research misuse. we want to make sure that different people are doing the things that are appropriate to their portion of the business, but that we're communicating actively and supporting each other in those processes. And of course, we've got integration and the IT role kind of sitting in here in the background. And you may recognize the frowns on the faces. There have been times when I have been in situations where things were not always clear and there was some confusion and frustration. So let's talk about tools that ChemDocs has to help support and overcome these challenges that are there. So where does ChemDocs help? ChemDocs supports regulatory experts in all tasks regarding hazardous materials management. We have the main application, which is called ChemDocs Core. And you saw me demonstrate ChemDocs Core in these last two demonstrations that I did. ChemDocs Core can be extended with additional ChemDocs applications, or apps as we call them, for specific use cases. And ChemDocs Core, together with the ChemDocs apps, forms an entire universe that we call the ChemDocs universe. It really is a one-stop solution for all of the EHS challenges. Let me explain how ChemDocs supports in two major aspects of these challenges. First of all, we need to communicate the hazards of our chemicals, our chemical mixtures, with our downstream users, especially through the generation of our own safety data sheets. And this is the SDS authoring, shown in pink in the illustrations that will follow. We also need to communicate hazards internally with our own people through the processing of incoming safety data sheets, and we need to check to make sure that the SDS information we receive is compliant. I have had the experience of receiving safety data sheets from my suppliers when I was working, for example, for the tiny grease and lubricants company, and I looked at them and I said, these people don't know what they're talking about. We need the ability to protect our workers and to check and make sure that the information that we're sharing is correct. And we also need easy ways to share that information throughout our organization, which can be challenging if it's a large organization. Now, if we look at these two workflows, we have the creation of documents going out. That's this pink line. And as you can see, we can start with minimal information, basically just a recipe for our mixture, our products. If we've actually activated the substances in ChemDocs, we just need the recipe. And with just very minimal information, we can create a safety data sheet. We can enrich that by adding our own test data, our own knowledge of the products and things like that. We can then classify those products and we can keep them up to date using the update checks that I showed you. And then we can create documents that we can then send to our customers. We can also create notifications like Poison Control Center notifications for Europe. And we can distribute labels, safety data sheets, exposure scenarios, technical data sheets, and other types of documents to our customers. That's one of the things that ChemDocs can do, and that's a need that we need to make. With regards to the blue line, the chemical management, we have to manage many internal documents, safety data sheets, technical data sheets, or certificates of analysis that we receive, other things like that. We can create and we can check the hazmat information on those using ChemDocs, and we can create custom reports. We can also distribute all of these documents or reports that we have. We can distribute labels to production, where production can actually add their own information, like lot number or expiration date. We can distribute incoming safety data sheets and labels and operating instructions. If I look at the apps that are there, oops, looks like I messed up my background, but we'll just go with that. We'll look at the picture here. If we look at the box here in pink representing ChemDocs Core, we have additional apps that can make the process better. So for example, we have what's called the intranet app, which allows us to distribute our incoming documents with appropriate search and classification tools to our internal users in the company. We have the SDS distribution app, which allows us to send documents out to our customers automatically. So anytime a the law basically says that anytime that a customer receives our product, they should get a new safety data sheet, or anytime that we update the safety data sheet. If they've purchased it in the last year, for example, they should get a new safety data sheet. The distribution app allows that to be done automatically with integration. We have the, excuse me, label app, which allows production workers to pull up labels created by the regulatory experts and add the lot number and expiration date and other things without the regulatory expert having to edit or manually change different labels. We also have the portal app, which allows our safety data sheets to be automatically distributed to our customers, either in an open system or through password limitations. We have the SDS distribution app. Again, that functions as the same as the one that's over here. And we have the relabeling app, which is used for distributors, where they can easily get and print new labels for their products if it's going to a different country or a different jurisdiction. Now, integration is essential. Good modern software is open and it can seamlessly be integrated into existing systems, and this can hugely improve productivity and quality. So, here are, as an example, we have a powerful REST API system that allows direct integrations through the JSON format with both third-party systems like Yavion and with our ChemDocs apps. So we're using the same REST API in integration with both third-party and ChemDocs apps. Now, typical systems that can integrate with ChemDocs, the ERP system, the CRM or customer relationship system, our lab system or LIMS system, our document management system, labeling software, a customer portal, for example, maybe a portal where customers can pull up safety data sheets, and our web shop. So we can integrate, for example, our web pages so that people can click on links and automatically get safety data sheets from ChemDocs. And if it's set up correctly, it can be done without any additional work on the part of the IT or the ERP professionals.
Yeah, that's great.
That is a great tool.
Yeah.
Here's the key takeaway. ChemDocs allows EHS professionals to focus on the critical tasks, all the while ensuring that safety and compliance remain top priorities. And this can be done using ChemDocs and, for example, Yavion integration, because safety matters. And we want to take away the monotony, make sure we get things done right, make sure people are protected, and do it in a way that's efficient and effective.